heads of state and government, Secretary General, delegates.
This was the Lagos Nigeria for Spectrum TV to report for the live safety county.
Very good morning to you and welcome to your morning news brief on Spectrum. Live from Uyo, I am Mary Joseph. We begin the news brief this morning with a report that the Akwa Ibom State Governor Domi Mano has received the Governor-elect Pastor Moino and Deputy Governor-designate Dr. Akoni Yayi, who went to present to him the certificate of return they received from the Independent National Electoral Commission (INEC) following their victory in the gubernatorial elections. Speaking with Government House correspondents, the Governor-elect Pastor Moino pointed out that having been given the mandate to lead Akwa Ibom people in the next political dispensation, his vision for the state as encapsulated in the Arise agenda will drive development in the rural areas by giving preference to agricultural development, infrastructural development, security and education. Meanwhile, Isikakabasi N. Orok has been appointed as the new clerk at the Akwa Ibom State House of Assembly. She would be taking over from Mandu Umoren, who retired recently from service. In a statement signed by Akirete Udo, Chief Press Secretary, Senior Special Assistant, Media to Governor Domi Mano, the appointment takes immediate effect. This statement also described Mrs. Orok as a consummate and thoroughbred civil servant. Meanwhile, Minister of Communication Issa Ali Pantami has inaugurated a Digital Economy Community of Practice, DECOP, developed to drive inclusive growth and sustainable development for stakeholders in the Nigerian digital ecosystem. The inauguration was done in conjunction with the Policy Innovation Center, PIC, of the Nigerian Economic Summit Group, NESG, in Abuja. Speaking at the event, the minister said that the Digital Economy Center has been doing well building and consolidating Nigeria's economy. He also used the opportunity to point out that the rejection of the 5% excise duty was necessary to avoid jeopardizing the growth and development that the sector has recorded. We head now to security, where the Chief of Defense Staff, General Lucky Rabo, has commended the Joint Task Force Operation Hadinkai, OPHK, and charged them to eliminate remaining insurgents terrorizing the Northeast region. The military chief, who addressed the soldiers at the Theatre Command Malari cantonment in Maiduguri, capital of Borno State, said a huge progress is being made in joint military operations to restore peace in Borno, Adamawa, and Yobe states. We head now to the foreign scene, where former President Donald Trump is facing more than 30 counts related to business fraud in an indictment from a Manhattan grand jury. It marks the first time in U.S. history that a current or former president will face criminal charges. The Manhattan District Attorney's Office has been investigating Trump in connection with his alleged role in a hush money payment scheme and cover-up involving adult film star Stormy Daniels during the 2016 presidential campaign. And finally, in sports, Nigeria's Super Eagles is now ranked 15th most expensive team in the world. The latest financial ranking to the national team, released by Transfer Market, witnessed a massive rise in the squad market value. Reports say that the rise in the squad market value saw the three-time African champions move up 2 steps and now rank the 13th most valuable international team globally, while also cementing its position in Africa as the most valuable team on the continent. We'll have details of the stories and more in our news at 12. I am Mary Joseph. Let's head back to Rise and Shine, where we have Janice and Uyai on standby. Do have a lovely weekend.
Heads of state and government, Secretary General, delegates.
This was the Lagos Nigeria for Spectrum TV to report for the live safety county.
Business exists only to meet the needs of the people, but there's an extra advantage if your product and services are pitched on a platform that gives you the added advantage over your competitors. For your desired return on investment and so much more, advertise on Spectrum Television on StarTimes DTH Channel 421 and on free-to-air with a frequency of 12733. Spectrum Television, broadening your horizon.
Nigerian police, which is the only one allowed by grossly abused. Our governors have to share police powers with the president as stipulated by the constitution. We do not have a federal government police force. We have the Nigerian police force, which shall be administered, organized, and supervised by the Nigerian police force.
No, my lord, I want to say something. I want to say something here. Perhaps it might also enlarge the scope of people who should be invited here for examination. My lord, if we cannot find those who literally murdered Abiola, who are those people who could be said to be the beneficiaries of the death of Abiola?
Rogers has linked you with some of the killings he did.
He never did.
He linked you with the attempted murder of Ibro.
He did not.
My lord, the matters council is leading the evidence in our matters.
Is this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord, but you can't be talking about cases which are in court,
Is
my lord.
this an adversary proceeding?
It's not, my lord. These cases are in court, my lord. I'm just reminding your lordship.
My lord, sorry, my lord, I think I'll be in cross-examination.
Legally Speaking, a program that deals with legal issues and questions we face as citizens of this amazing country, Nigeria. Legally Speaking. Join us every
Friday from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m.
for Legally Speaking.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is Rise and Shine, and we're coming to you live from Uyo, the capital city of Akwa Ibom State, Nigeria. And Rise and Shine, we bring you conversations of topical things happening around the country. Of course, this morning we've already looked at a couple of issues arising out of our country. First off was the fact that we hear the president-elect Bola Tinubu putting up a suit against Channels Television for a particular broadcast that they had. Of course, he called on the NBC to sanction the said private TV station. We also saw the fact that the People's Democratic Party has lifted the suspension and sanctions that it placed on some of its members, the likes of Ayim Pius Ayim, Fayose of Ekiti State, and some other members of the PDP. We also saw the fact that Chris Land, Principal, and others have been granted bail upon the continued investigation into the alleged manslaughter of Whitney, who was a student who died there a couple of weeks back. Mary Joseph brought us tidbits of global news. At this point, we'll be moving straight ahead into Daily Spotlight, where we bring you stories from the front pages of our national dailies. All right.
Okay, welcome back. Before we even look at the papers, we are all over the country yesterday elected gubernatorial candidates and state houses of assembly candidates actually also received their certificate of return yesterday across the country. And in Akwa Ibom State here, of course, we saw Pastor Moino also receive his certificate of return. And you know, he is being attached with the mantra of a happy hour. I think a lot of Nigerians will not forget happy hour in a hurry. And in most cases, we see that, yes, there's this continued conversations. Now, when Nigerians want to talk, they are of the opinion that, oh, let's hurry up so that we go for happy hours and all of that. And we also hear that he reiterated it again yesterday when he was having his certificate of return. And of course, he also made mention of the fact that, yes, he is ready to serve, and that all those that feel dissatisfied with the outcome of the results of the elections should actually sheath their sword and come on the drawing board so they can put their hands together on the plow and push good governance in Akwa Ibom State.
This has to be a major congratulations to Pastor Moino now, who is the governor-elect of Akwa Ibom State. Of course, he had gone ahead to say thank you and present his certificate of return in company with the deputy governor-elect and designate Senator Akuniyayin. Of course, they went to see their, what we call their principal, the one who anointed them, and has seen them through the season to entering into the Hilltop Mansion. That's the sitting governor of Akwa Ibom State, Governor Dom Emmanuel. And it must be a good day for the People's Democratic Party in Akwa Ibom State and members of the State House at this time. And I'm already seeing, you know, some really quick transformation as against a lot of things we used to see. But then this is a good one. To say that he hampered again on his happy hour agenda, I would say that he's cashing in on the moment with the rave that you know, happy hour brought about. And yesterday we heard the fact that he reiterated that yes, Akwa Ibom youths are not lazy, so it's more like after they have put in all the work, they should, you know, he still stands by the fact that they need to go and relax. And you know, just on the sidelines, the first that will be the first Friday after the elections were conducted. a couple of people came together in the States and actually did host a happy hour. And I was so amazed. I'm like from play, this is going to turn to a real issue in Akwa Ibom, you know. But it's good to see we said, it's an initiative that if expounded upon, it can actually mean something really,
and if packaged
resourceful.
properly.
Yes.
Yeah, because it's more like you doing something like a trade fair where different vendors come together, you know, to sell their wares, maybe at very subsidized rates and all of that. So if it's being packaged properly, maybe he gets somebody that knows how to create these things, you know, content around the happy hour policy, and then the person, you know, creates it in a very proper way where we have vendors of different sorts come together in a particular space, you know, more like an open space, and people just have get to relax and unwind, you know, and get productive for the next week. I think it will go a long way to also you know, revamp the tourism lifestyle in Akwa Ibom State, and also boost the economy of the state. So at some point, you will see that a lot of people will be coming even from neighboring states like Cross River State, like Ebonyi State, and River State, Abia State, and all the neighboring states in Akwa Ibom State. So it will just evolve from just, you know, people coming together to eat and drink to even people buying things at very subsidized rates and all of that. So you have people that would maybe like bring their craft and services to come and showcase in these kinds of places. So we still go back to the point that if properly packaged, it will definitely boost the hospitality business in Akwa Ibom State. And let's not forget, Pastor Moeno is a hospitality person, because that is where he is coming from. That is his strength. And so we don't have to say that, oh, you don't have to harness on your strength, you know, in trying to make sure that you put things together for Akwa Ibom State people, or in terms of governance. I think it's okay for him to cash in on something he knows he can do very well, and see how that will evolve, you know, the state and the people of the state moving forward.
It's actually an area that can be cashed out, especially because we already have precedents in terms of hospitality and good food, and a state that has, you know, really nice scenery, clean and quiet. If you add the advantage of spiking certain intelligence with regards to service delivery, hospitality, and the food, I think we can, you know, really make gains on it. So although laughable in the initiation, can become something worth the while. I mean, we are talking about islands like Abu Dhabi. We're talking about you know, Dubai, that has become a hub for everyone, but that's, you know, city is trailing on hospitality, food, and a destination for holidays. So these are things that we can also achieve with these kinds of initiative if properly expounded upon. But it's a major congratulations for Pastor Umoino and Akoni Yarin, who are the Governor and Deputy Governor-elect of Akwa Ibom State, upon receiving the certificate of return from the Independent National Electoral Commission here in Akwa Ibom State yesterday. We're looking forward to greater days. I mean, like the golden era, like you rightly say.
Yeah, definitely. And so we just quickly look at what the papers have to say this morning. So let's look at our national dailies, and this morning we're starting with the Nation newspaper. I don't think that this morning will give opportunity to Nigerians to make their say, because we have a guest that is standing by already to join us on the conversations, on a different conversation altogether though. But let's see what the Nation newspaper has to say very, very quickly. The big story on the Nation paper says Sage Abakoba Falano, interim government unknown to law. Of course, still on the issue of interim government being very unconstitutional. And the writer says legal giants seek trial of plotters, Lalong interim government schemers daydreaming. Of course, moving forward, CCB begins probe of Keyama's anti-graft petition against Atiku. Public debt now 45 trillion naira, says DMO. And then we also have APC. US condemns anti-Tinubu protest. We still have a lot of protests going on across the country as people are dissatisfied with the outcome of the presidential elections in Nigeria. PDP lifts suspension on IM and Fayose and others. And then we also have the rider Ayu's Ward ESCO suspended. Okay, you can have details of that story on page 5. Still a lot of trouble coming in for the People's Democratic Party. We hope that they can put their house together moving forward. Another story here says UBA delivers 201 billion naira full year profits. Oh, well done to UBA. First Bank OK's name change, UK Africa subsidiaries. Okay, so there's going to be a name change for a bank called First Bank. All right, so I think that's just about it that we have on the front page of the Nation newspaper. Yeah,
let's move quickly now to Nigerian Tribune. Looking at the big story there, the big story there says DMO, Nigeria's public debt rises to 46.25 trillion naira. Page 6. We have here African leaders must take urgent steps to stem Japatai or Wolowo Dusumu. Task governments to leverage digital technologies in public service and other sectors. NURTW threatens showdown with Ondo government over park managers. UBA's profit hits 201 billion naira. Declares 90 kobo final dividend. We also have here PDP squashes suspension of Shima, Fayose and Anyim, reverses Autumn's referral to disciplinary committee. Okay. Page 12. We also have here Supreme Court dismisses ex-minister Nwajuba's suit seeking to disqualify Tinubu Atiku. Page 5. Interim government unconstitutional. Whoever calls for it commits felony, treason, Agbakoba, Aliyu, Ayorinje, others. We are not part of insurrection plans, says Labour Party. That's all we have in the front page of the Nigerian Tribune.
Yeah, quite interesting stories that we are. African leaders must take urgent steps to stem Japa tide. And then you ask, meanwhile, the African leaders that we have themselves will go for medical tourism at the instance of having just a headache. Okay, we'll see how that goes and how that pans out at the end of the day in Nigeria. But we are just hoping that actually we can stem the tide of Japa syndrome because it's costing the country a whole lot. Let's look at what the Punch newspaper has to say this morning. Obviously, the big story here says PDP nullifies IM Fayose suspension and sanctions Ward ESCO. Opposition party lists ex-Casino government governor for orders as peace moves continues. Party reverses autumn summon to face disciplinary panel, 6 members unity, and you can find that on page 2 of the Punch newspaper. PDP doing so much to put their house in order. Sanwo-Olu Makinde gets certificate of return, pledges good governance. Okay, Sanwo-Olu Makinde and others get certificate of return and pledge good governance. Muslims couple can get intimate after breaking fast. Cleric. Okay, you can find that story on page 12. Whitney, Lagos arraigns Chrisland principal orders for manslaughter. And then we also have Ondo chapter tackles Adebanjo over Afenifere chieftains. You can find that story on page 12. OPS predicts woes as national debt hits 46 trillion naira. Well, yeah, I think this is like very serious concerns.
The DMO report?
Yes, 46 trillion naira as debts in Nigeria. And just about a few weeks ago or days ago now, we heard that, the government was also seeking for another kind of loan that was rejected by the House of Reps and all of that. So I think that this needs some kind of very critical analysis on what this means for the country and the economy when the national debt of a country raises to this kind of amount. Where does that leave us? How can we even, generate enough revenue to come out of such debt crisis? It's really pathetic. Let's move forward now. Election Tribunal, Tinubu gets Atiku Obi's petitions, and you can find that on page 25. Controversies around Silva's alleged resignation. Page 10 is where you get that story, and that's all that it is on the front page of the Punch newspaper.
Moving on now straight to this day newspaper, and the big story there says Agbakoba, no constitutional provision for interim government. It's nonsense. It's an idea not feasible under Buhari, says Lalong. And CD dismisses it as unwarranted, unnecessary and subversive. DSS report is fake. Plot to arrest Atiku Obi alleges Frank. There's a lot of mixture just going on in the leadership of our country. We now have here Donald Trump indicted by Manhattan grand jury, may face over 30 counts of business-related fraud. Former US president fires back, says it's witch hunt that will backfire massively on Joe Biden. Okay, we also have a full year 2022. UBA delivers strong results as profit hit 201 billion naira, declares 90 kobo final dividend, total assets rise by 27.2%. Now, same story again. DMO, new borrowings, promissory notes, others pushed Nigeria's public debt to 46.25 trillion naira. So we are seeing that the new borrowings we are pushing for, the promissory notes that the government has engaged, and other financial activities, 46.25 trillion. That's a lot of numbers, Janice. We also see here, okay, there is a picture story there of Sanwo-Olu getting his certificate of return. Of course, he's the governor-elect and incumbent of Lagos State. And that's all we have on the front page of this day.
Okay, let's move quickly now to our last paper for the morning, and that's our Daily Sun. And of course, the issue of interim government still playing out on the front pages. It says interim government allegation ploy to arrest opposition Atiku. Okay, so interim government allegation ploy to arrest opposition, a statement there by Atiku, obviously saying that the story is not true. We have a rider here that says challenges DSS to name those behind plots. Count us out, says Labour Party. Such plan will be major setback, says Agbakoba. And we also have Sanwo-Olu, Mba, Abiodun, Mufwang, Aliyu wave olive branch as more governors, lawmakers elect receive certificates. We did not issue seat at home in Lagos, says IPOP. I saw that story and it was quite funny how what's his name now, was saying that there was going to be a seat at home in Lagos State. I'm trying to wrap my head around his name now. Okay. But the writer of the story says that Southeast leaders take attack on Igbo to international communities. I think this is quite saddening. Alleged manslaughter, court admits Chrisland staff to bail. And alleged vote buying, Supreme Court dismisses ex-minister's suit against Atiku and Tinubu. NLC to Ugwuanyi, will miss you. Oh wow, you can find that story on page 29. And then we also see here a story that says APC petitions embassy over Baba Ahmed's no president-elect comment. We talked about that earlier on the show as a flash news, and I think that's basically all. CCB invites Keyamo over petition against Atiku. That's just all the stories that we have on the Daily Sun newspaper. But quite interesting story, I must say. Quite interesting times too in the country. And okay, we have a story here, quite serious story, that says Nigerians in US secure permits to protest over February 25 elections.
Oh yes, there's been a lineup of several protests expected from Nigerians in diaspora, even in the UK. Yeah. So there's plans by Nigerians to protest the results, and you're saying that if the results of the February 25th elections is even rebutted by Nigerians outside the country, how much more Nigerians in the country? It further strains the conversation around that particular election.
Yeah, definitely. And interim government allegation ploy to arrest opposition. Serious comments there by a presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar. For him, he thinks that it's just a plan and a ploy from the DSS, Department of State Services, to clamp down on opposition. Obviously, the statement from DSS yesterday was the fact that, there's so much protest around, and all of that. And these are signals to the fact that there is a plan for an interim government, and all of that. So interim government, according to Atiku, the story around it and everything is more like, this is just the plan, a ploy, and the DSS in it to make sure that opposition is clamped down on, and we don't have people, agitating against the results of the February 25 elections. But that's his opinion. That's what he
there's
thinks.
some other quarters that are seeing that whole interim government's move as a deliberate distraction set up for Nigerians at this time. But we'll continue to see how this progresses.
But again, that we talked about this issue yesterday, and most of the things that Nigerians said when they called in from all across the country was, if the DSS as a secret unit, secret security unit, intelligence unit of the country is coming up with this kind of intelligence information, it's not something that should be in the open. Okay, it should be it should be close knitted. Maybe you just discuss it with the relevant people, and it's kept close to chest while you go around your investigation. And then most importantly as well, by the outcome of your investigation, you make the necessary arrest. So Nigerians are not just hearing that there is a plan for an interim government or there is a ploy for an interim government. We are hearing that there was a plan for an interim government, but we have made this kinds of progress in terms of arresting the culprits, because right now it gives people it gives room for people to begin to have different opinions about whether this is true or this is just a scam or a sham coming from the DSS, and it further plunges the integrity of that
and
unit
the trust of Nigerians
and the trust of Nigerians on that institution.
And I think another problem, another risk that we stand on is the fact that if you're not careful, even political players can hijack this, because already we are beginning to hear conversations of party A saying, it has to be people in party B that are instigating this, it is people in party B that are instigating this. It already, Nigeria as a country, we are quick to weaponize things that are in the open space. So even if it had another conversation or it was another push from a different organization altogether, you're going to have opposing parties try to take it up as a weapon against the other. And it's just, it's bad for the polity of the country that is already very unstabilized, in the moment. But of course, let's just see how that goes. We do hope that intelligence is applied to, how this particular issue is handled, and let words not get out of hand.
Definitely. Okay, so at this point, we hear our guests standing by. Let's still talk politics and women participation in politics. When we even look at the 2023 just concluded elections, we begin to wonder where the place of women in all of the schemes of things that happened in the country. Why didn't we have a whole lot of women, participating in this particular election in terms of vying for political positions, and not just at the background, campaigning for the men and collecting wrappers and salts and seasoning cubes and all of that. I think that the conversation has gone beyond women just getting all of this incentives and pushing for political positions for our men, but has gotten to a stage where we needed to see more women come out, to participate in the just concluded elections in terms of vying for positions. But that didn't happen. And even the ones that happened, we still have the situation in Adamawa State. Is it Adamawa? Yes, Adamawa State, where Binani was actually leading at some point, but the whole thing just crumbled in front of a lot of Nigerians. But joining us to have that conversation this morning is Nafisa Atiku Adejuwon, who is the Executive Director, Girls Just Want to Run Initiative. Thank you so much, Nafisa, for joining us this morning. I know that we were supposed to have it yesterday, but quite a little bit of hitches here and there, and we didn't have that conversation yesterday. But thank you so much for being there this morning.
Thank you so much for having me. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you're very audible.
Clear.
Okay, so you won't be talking to just me. I have my co-presenter here, Uyai Aniekan.
Good morning, Nafsa. Good to have you on the show this morning.
Good morning. It's nice to see you. Thank you for having me.
All right. I literally would like to ask, how is Abuja this morning?
Yeah.
How are things holding up with all that is happening in the country?
Well, I like to say that Abuja, indigents are pretty much peaceful. We don't like too much stress, so things are still calm. People are still carrying on, with their jobs, their businesses, and their families. So I think we're okay for now, but we will see. Things can turn around pretty quickly. I'm sure that something that we've learned in the past few years.
Okay. All right, so looking at 2023 elections that's just been completed, I would say that for the first time we seem to have had a little bit of a spike in women participation. It may not be to the percentage that we would have loved, but we saw quite a spike in the number of women that came to vie for positions. I think initially, from when it was just aspirations, we had about 2 or 3 women in the presidential race. We had a 35-year-old that was running. I know she didn't get to becoming a candidate, but then we had that. Then we had a number of women across the country, I think about 5, 6, that stood up as deputy governors, candidates also across different parties. We had someone, Aisha now Binani, who stood up tall, even in the race of the gubernatorial elections in Adamawa, almost for us to start celebrating that we had for the first time a female, governor-elect. Yes, and the win was, prematurely celebrated. So I just wanted to give us a background overhaul from your standpoint. What are your thoughts about women participation in the just concluded cycle of elections?
Well, my honest opinion is that it's not good enough. In fact, it's really, really, really very, very poor. How many women do we have in the Senate? We have just about 3. And then altogether in the Federal House of Reps, we have about 12 or 13 out of the amount of seats. Women occupy less than 3.5% of the federal lawmakers that have been elected in the just concluded 2023 elections. So it's a really, really poor number. It's a really, really, really poor number. I think the only number that can be compared was in 1999. That's how bad it is when we're literally just starting democracy. So we can clearly see that even though there's an increased amount of participation per se and knowledge about the issues and agitating for the issues, there hasn't been like any real tangible progress in terms of impact and in terms of tangible effects when it comes down to the ground norm. So take it back down to 2015 elections. There was a lot of talk about young people being apathetic and not understanding how the system of government work and how we generally don't like to participate in our civic duties. There has been an increase from 2015 down to 2023 on the way young people are being aware of the issues, but has that translated into real representation, inclusive representation in public sector governance? No. It's literally the same story and trajectory with women in politics, young women in politics who have become more aware. We can see women protesting. There were several gender-sensitive bills that were being pushed last year, and when they were rejected by the House of Reps, women came out to protest. But have those protests, those agitations, the awareness, the knowledge, the participation, the civic activism translated into real progress in public sector governance? No, it hasn't. So there's a lot being done. There have been a lot of investments into women, such as capacity building programs, funding these women candidates. But there are some very serious roadblocks. And if we don't tackle those roadblocks and barriers, then we can't make any progress as a country when it comes to gender parity.
Now, I like the fact that you've made mention of the fact that from 2015, looking at the elections and everything, there's just a whole lot of new awareness and new conscientization, you know, coming from young people and women alike. But it's quite worrisome when you say that all of the conversations that we've been trying to push in terms of women participation and politics of inclusivity, there has not been any tangible change. So we still have women and young people running around in terms of campaigning for for the men folk to get the political positions, and not necessarily, you know, finding women inclusive in taking leadership positions. So that is a problem here. And you talked about roadblocks. So maybe you can actually push these roadblocks across. Let us find out, let us know exactly what the roadblocks are and why we have not been able to break these kinds of barriers.
Okay. So I'll major down, you know, on the roadblocks itself. So we definitely have a lot of factors when it comes to, you know, what are the barriers blocking women from entering political office. Of course, we have the political violence, which is a real major issue. I'm sure we saw that during this election. Political violence is a huge issue. The finance, the social and cultural, you know, perspectives, etc. Those are factors. They are very strong and valid factors. However, I think we need to boil it down and think about the political party system. We all know that political parties are literally the engines or the vehicles through which someone can acquire political power in a particular geographical location, being Nigeria. Now, do these political parties have internal democracy? No. Do these political parties have a gender, a quota, affirmative action within their party constitutions to push for women or reserve seats for women? Let's not deceive ourselves, and let's be very frank about the conversation. Different countries in Africa, such as South Africa, Rwanda, have achieved a level of gender parity within their public sector governance because they have used policy frameworks to keep quotas for women. It's affirmative action, policy affirmative action to keep setting seats for women. Say, you know what, 35% of this, which is the minimum benchmark, women are going to occupy these spaces. We know that pushing that as a policy framework for the entire country will be hard. So why don't we start with this, the political party system in itself? These political parties have constitutions. I was able to, as part of a consultancy I was able to review, the constitutions of several different political parties, from PDP to APC to, to ABGA and if you look at the language and the structure of their constitutions, it's a nice to have, and it is not enforceable. Some constitutions don't even talk about it at all. There's no room for women. We need to, and these are systemic and institutional barriers within the political party systems, which I really think it's something that we need to pay attention today as against 2027. Because no matter how much you fund the women, no matter how much you call them into a space, a hotel, and you equip them and you push knowledge into their brains and you empower them to go out, they are going into a system that is rigged against them from the start. So by the time you go through those systems, only a tickle of the women emerge. So you have this active participation, this renewed passion and enthusiasm, women entering the system, but they are not emerging. Why? Because there are blockades literally within that system that's not allowing them to emerge, and that's it.
Okay, that's a lot of insight, because when you're talking about policy framework, like she said, the system is fighting the women from the grassroots. So it's not just about giving us billboards about women being involved, but then talking in terms of ranking, but because sometimes, like she's saying, the numbers help us to relate with how bad the situation is on ground, and we're looking at the fact that out of 192 countries, Nigeria ranks 184 on the list of countries poor in women representation. And in Africa, yet we have other neighboring African countries where we have women leading in their numbers. So how come the giant of Africa is falling behind, with regards to these? And we are wondering, you've already highlighted a few of them, what we can do differently for us to begin to see the numbers rise. But then again, you're interacting with women in politics. Do you think that women actually have the interest of themselves to vie for political positions and see through to the end, so that it's not also an issue of, oh, the men are handing down, political positions to the women. When you're saying, oh, come together, put together funding, we hear in some parties we are going to reduce the cost of the form if a woman is the one buying. Those kinds of landmines, do they give the woman the psychological stamina and boost for her to actually go for these political offices?
Well, thank you so much for that question. It's like a multifaceted question, and I'm going to try my best to answer it. You see, when it comes to politics and political stamina and emotional and psychological support, there's a lot that needs to be done for women. Because if we want to start from the media to the attacks that they face, just daring to come out for office, within the political party system itself and within the electorate in itself. So there is a lot. But being this March today's the last day in March, and it's the International Women's Month, and of course we are here to celebrate women and everything that they have done. And the theme is equity as against equality. So a lot of people feel like reducing the nomination forms for women and saying, okay, these are tokenism, are acts of tokenism, and that's not right. It's wrong. It's a totally wrong perception. It's basically equity. Equity in itself demands that different people, due to their sociological differences and what they have passed through, their environmental factors, need customized, inclusive methods to help them to succeed. So you can't take somebody from the south or the north or the east and basically give them a blanket solution all through, because they each have different needs. So you need to fashion out different solutions that can meet them at their point of need. That's what equity is about. So political parties or systems that reduce the forms and say, you know what, you can go ahead to do this, is because women generally have been so marginalized and pushed to the back, which is not the situation with the men folk who are in the political parties. The men folk in the political parties have access to networks, the boys club, the finances, the businesses, education, which the women don't have. So there's a lot of work and not a lot of help that needs to be given to women so that they can meet up with the quota. So this is just one aspect of helping women to cross over into the threshold. Definitely, when they have that support, when they have an enabling environment so that they can succeed, they will definitely succeed. I was at a launch yesterday by Techer and the EDM Chioma. She was the Techer is basically a non-profit that focuses on online gender-based violence, and they were saying that when we tell women to enter these spaces, we don't prepare for the risks and the fragilities that women will face if they enter these spaces, because it's not just enough to say enter. They need you enter. What about the systems that are rigged and are dangerous and are created to favor a particular demography or a particular gender? So these are the questions that we need to ask. If we're telling women to enter inside, we need to push and make it an enabling environment so that they can thrive. If we can't do that, then we're just planting seeds on a rocky field.
But the point is, we've been having this series of conversation for the longest of time, and it seems that it's more like we're just pouring water on the back of a duck. It's not yielding that the desired results and effects. So why do we still keep talking about it? And just like you said, when you talked about creating, maybe giving a subsidized rate for funds and all of that, you say it was wrong. So it puts the woman in a situation or position where she thinks that she's weak. Why don't we allow them go on the open and contest these elections at the same pace and the same ranking with the men? Why do we have to begin to reduce the prices of forms, or even call for a 35% affirmative action or a reservation of certain seats in the House of Reps or Senate or even the state houses of assembly for women?
Yes. So the reason why we consistently talk about it is because we left them to run on their own and they never got there. It's through questioning the system and doing research and data analysis that we then realize, okay, we need to do certain steps and take it forward. See, it's like an entire country, to be honest. I'm not going to go into some other details because they'll be off the topic, but we tend to like to focus on the superficial as against drill down into the real structural issues that exist that foster exclusion. And policy frameworks are structural, systemic, institutional barriers. That is it's a really hard problem. Believe me. Think the process to getting a party to amend their constitution down to their convention is a long-term process of about the minimum 4 years. Which is why we need to start the conversations now. Some time ago I was saying that CSOs, the international development partners, they don't usually come 4 years before the election. They come 1 year to the election and they start pouring money into women, and that's not going to work. It might help some people, but if you want to create sustainable change, it's not going to work. So these conversations need to be had 4, 5, 8 years before the time. We need to start negotiating with power brokers, saying this is what we need to do. How do we marshal women into this system and create an enabling environment for them, address these policies? Because the conventions literally are when the party will say, you know what, we adopt this amendment to our constitution, and then we will take it. Imagine having those amount of power brokers in one place. I'm sure we've seen how political parties do their conventions. It's not a small thing. So this is a huge insurmountable task. Not only does it need stamina, consistency, it needs a lot of passion and a lot of unity within the stakeholders in that space to push such solutions forward. So that's literally my
Speaking about unity, right, and stamina collectively, let's look at women supporting women in roles like this, because it looks like on the front, it looks like women do not stand women growing in certain areas. I know we are doing pretty well in the private sector, but when we talk of politics, if I saw a woman vying for a position, I myself, will I really take my vote to her? Do we believe in female governance of electoral positions in this country? And from your stance, do you think that women are actually supporting women in the push for governance in Nigeria? Is this something you think we will embrace?
Okay, so I think that's a 50-50 question. I think that most of the time women don't support other women, right, in the context of which you're asking, because they don't believe they can win, because they've seen all the obstacles. On the other flip side, I'm going to touch on a quick thing of mentorship, because it's a really understated, subject when it comes to political development. See, different political office holders who are men, they groom their successors. So they literally pick up men, and then disciple them, teach them, this is what you do. They are very intentional about people that they bring into their space and people that come after them. To a very large extent, I don't think that's been true of the women who have held office in this country. Some of them might have, but a majority of them don't, right? And I think I will give you a perception. Because they've gone through so much to get into that office, they've been abused, they've been in different ways. That's why, even emotional and psychological support is needed for women who run for office, because there's a lot that they go through. I can tell you that there's a lot that they go through. So by the time they get to that office, they are most likely hardened, not really opening the space up for other women to come, because they feel like, they've more than earned their stripes. And why should I mentor another woman into this place so that she'll come and outshine me? It's a valid thing, things that I've literally heard people say. So there is a really huge need within the political space, even if we have only 3 women in the Senate, even if we have only 13 women in the House of Reps, to intentionally bring women into those spaces, special assistants, commissioners, whatever it is. Because the more you give them opportunities to step into those spaces to grow, the more you have women's representation on those tables, literally. So it's a really important. So women do support women, and then some women also don't support women because of these different factors. It's a really hard terrain, but because it's hard doesn't mean we shouldn't be there. If not, it is more justification on why we should enter there and change the system.
All right, so we just have about 3 minutes for us to wrap up this conversation. But I think I would like to ask you parting words, aside from government changing policies and trying to amend the constitution to fit the needs of women, and also urge them to further, take up leadership positions in terms of politics now. What will be your parting word for women, for government, for private individuals as it stands?
Okay, so to women, I would say that I think the journey starts now, and we need to start now. It's not a tomorrow conversation, it's not a next week conversation, it's a now conversation. because the sooner we start it, the sooner we can achieve some progress. And we need to make women issues a frontline issue in the 2027 elections. We need to gather ourselves together as a massive pressure group who know their rights and want to enforce it. To private sector individuals and people, please, the best thing you can do to women is support their causes. Let it not just be that match rolled over. Okay, we put a banner, we held the program for them. How are you actually supporting them? Are you funding their businesses? Are you funding their non-profits? Are you funding their political ambitions? Are you giving them access to opportunities that they would have ordinarily had if you were not in the room? How are we translating this into real action? That's what I would say to private sector individuals. There are 1,001 non-profits, 1,001 people who are doing great work for women causes in this country. Pick one, fund one. It's important. Fund it, champion it, and put your back behind it. And I think we can make some progress that way. So thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Nafisa Atiku Adejumo, who is the Executive Director for Girls Just Want to Run initiative. Thank you so much for being a part of our show, and definitely we'll hope to have you again and again, to talk about this and also talk about your organization that is Girls Just Want to Run. Really want to know what Girls Wants to Run initiative is all about. But thank you so much. Some other time we can have those lines of conversation. Thank you so much once again, and do have a great day.
Thank you so much for having me, and have a great day.
All right.
You too. All right. That was such a great conversation, very enlightening. Just helps you to see what we are dealing with. Because I think, like she rightly said, we are superficial in our approach to things. I think it's also the conversation we're having about when you have people pushing instigations against the media. You just want us to have superficial conversations about issues that have eaten deep into the the cervix of our country, but it won't work for us. We'll never get into solving the problems if we stay that way.
And I like the fact that she's been able to stitch the private sector into all of this. Corporate social responsibilities is not just about there's no pipe-borne water in a particular environment, let's provide that. There is no education in a particular environment, let's provide that. We can actually look for women that are into one thing or the other, and fund those people, make sure that their voices are heard. I know there are a couple of people, that try to work on domestic violence against women, but I think it's not enough. Let's go forward to empowering women. One other thing that would stop a woman from going forward and having their voices heard in terms of vying for political position is when they don't even have the financial backing that they have, that they need to have. It limits them. So when a woman builds financial freedom, it gives her some level of confidence. It gives her some level of voice, and she's able to speak.
Wow.
But that's the much that we will be taking today. It's a Friday, do not forget. And in Akwa Ibom State, happy hour begins. My name is Janice Kobum, and I will definitely see you again next week. But until then, keep being great and always lend a helping hand to someone out there.
Social engineering, re-engineering is part of how we can drive conversations to make our country better. That's something you and I can do every day when we have the opportunity. My name is Uya Anek, and thanks for being a part of Rise and Shine the whole week long. We'll definitely do this again next week. Bye-bye.